We're back.
Yeah.
We have covered your third favourite Maiden albums.
Yep.
I need to reveal my third favourite Maiden.
You got my notes at the back there, mate.
Oh, sorry, dude. Great. Avalanche of Maiden favourite.
Go for it then. Probably need to go back a bit.
You need to flick back to the start of your list.
Behind your fine head of hair, I believe the answer lies.
In order of rankings, this album reached for Smithy, number 9, so top 10.
Top 10,
I'm proud of you. Right?
Thanks.
It was also in Lammy's top 10 at number 8. This is my third favourite Iron Maiden record. It's their second album, and it's Killers.
There it is on the vinyl.
Killers. My third favourite.
This is your third favourite Maiden album. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. It's going to be a discussion point now.
Incredible.
Graphics will appear above.
I will. I'll just put it here.
Yeah.
And
So this is 1981.
I suppose I'll have to tell you why, but do you want to go through some background?
This, we don't have a running order. You get in there and give us this hard sell for Schmitz.
It's not a hard sell though, because as he said, it progressed into my top 10.
Yeah, it's all
Beat
in our
other
top
records.
10, which says a lot about it, even ranked at 10. This album is the biggest grower on me of all their records, I would probably say.
Very nice.
Of any of their studio output, this is the one that over, I don't know how many years, like 25 years of listening to Iron Maiden or something, probably now for me. Well, yeah, probably a bit more to be fair, about 30 years of listening to Maiden.
Jesus,
25 years, something around there.
Yeah.
This is the one that has climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed as one of my all-time favourites. Track by track, the olds of March, just that classic sort of instrumental intro into Wrathchild. Yeah.
One of my favourite Maiden tracks.
Wicked. You like that one?
Wrathchild is right up there.
Yeah.
Grinder.
And Adrian Smith joins on this. I think that's one for you, Lammy, to get into.
So he joins during that first calendar year after the debut. So I think one of the first headlines was a sort of break in Adrian Smith, according to information I have found. So it isn't just a question of, they've toured Maiden and they've written this and then he comes in and plays on it. He's part of the writing process as well, so he's in the band.
Yeah. Wicked. Murders in the Rue Morgue, that will hit easily my top 10 favourite Maiden songs.
Just runs at you. It's incredible. Another
Life, Genghis Khan. It's got no skips on this for me at all. The self-titled is an absolute killer. Prodigal Son's an absolute killer. Purgatory, this for me is Iron Maiden. This is, there's so many different Iron Maidens. Even though from an outside looking in, you might think that they have such a definitive sound, etc., etc. I do pick out some big differences in their studio stuff. Yes, I know it's Di'Anno still, it's a different singer.
Yeah,
It's an old record, so the production's a lot grittier compared to even like a Piece of Mind or even a Number of the Beast.
Yeah.
It's a lot grittier than Knob, isn't it? They do everything a little bit better than they do on their first record for me on this one.
They do everything that they got wrong for me right on this album.
Yeah.
They
of
really
course,
do.
piece of history now, Martin Birch.
Yeah.
So this is where you're talking about performances. Of course, the sound of the album, its consistency. That's now bringing in a producer who's done a lot of records already with a lot of people. He's done Whitesnake a bit before this. He's done Deep Purple, and so of course he's coming in with a bit of pedigree. And I think obviously that works towards Harris's professionalism and his need to have everything, as perfect as it can be. And that highlights your point, as I've said. The performances and everything else sonically, it's a huge step up from that debut.
Yeah. A massive step up. It sounds razor sharp.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, it's so much punch on this record.
Yeah.
And if anything, they've embraced the punk that Di'Arno wanted to bring in a lot more.
Ripper.
Yeah.
Purgatory's a ripper.
The first one, for me, they spend so much time trying to find their sound that they kind of miss what they're doing well.
Yeah.
That's why I struggle with self-titled. It seems like disjointed. Whereas with this, I think they just kind of appreciated that they could do what they want now, but they will have this bit in the middle keeping it together, and that's that razor sharp metallic sound that hasn't really been heard before.
And I think Birch has got a massive part to play on that, and he always said, didn't he, that like, why did you not ask me to do your first album, didn't he?
The artwork as well.
The artwork's killer. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, we probably are going to go through this quite quickly because I just
can't find fault.
I can't find fault, Lemmy. I think it trumps Knob. I think it trumps Peace of Mind.
I think for me, it's down me or 8 for me for a couple of reasons. Genghis Khan is a bit of a throwaway for me.
Okay.
I've never been one for instrumentals and albums, particularly if you've got this amount of quality swirling around. I think for me,
I love it.
Not too great. And I think Another Life in Innocent Exile, they're good songs.
Yeah.
But they're not stand out enough. If they were missing or swapped around, you wouldn't notice.
Sure.
So that's why it sunk down slightly for me. But, you know, Wrathchild, Murders, Killers, Purgatory, that is stuff that will be played in live sets for a long time to come.
Yeah.
And absolutely just like, they are all songs way above the debut. I just think it's just slightly patchier, which is why it moves down for me. Why it wasn't in that top 8. Interestingly, there is a track from this era, which will be pretty much the final non-album single called Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Which I believe is slipped onto your possible reissue there.
Yeah.
It was a non-album single, with Purgatory being really the album's actual other main single, which is an absolute ripper of a track.
Some of my favourite artwork on that one, where it's half the devil, half Eddie, half the devil, wasn't it?
So Twilight Zone.
Sick.
Twilight Zone and Purgatory, you know, slide tracks on the B-side. You also had the Maiden Japan live EP at this place, which is really officially the first Maiden live release, sort of coming around at this time. Live at the Rainbow VHS,
which is phenomenal.
You know, absolutely there. And of course, this is technically after the more ghoulish Eddies. We see the Eddie with just the eyes and the silhouette on Running Free. We've got the very punk Eddie, as you put it, on the debut.
Yeah.
And then as you go through, I think it's not Women in Uniform. Women in Uniform and a Sanctuary single covers. Eddie is again like the debut. This is almost now the first time you get the real Eddie.
Yeah.
Not to say the others weren't.
For me, the
loose and murderous.
Yeah. The look of the skull, the way it's drawn, and everything else.
I just love the background as well. I love that rear window looking background.
This is the start of it. This is the birth of Eddie. You know, Killer World Tour, of course, and the new wave of British heavy metal is obviously at this point at its absolute peak in terms of history for this album to slot into.
Yeah.
It's got, you think of it, something like Purgatory stuff, like Motorhead style Rampage.
Yeah.
And you've got classic rock in this and the metal, so certainly in terms of
British,
British.
great as well.
Yeah, the live
just a live shot with the original Eddie up the top.
And we'll just say, because we've talked about this at Number of the Beast, but this is Paul Di'Anno's second and last album. So again, we've not got privy to events. There is half a bunch of stories that will say he was sacked, and half a bunch, that he was fired, and half a bunch will say he quit.
Yeah.
So there's arguments on both sides for it, but it is generally known that he was not doing too well with Quid Simpson's quote, "Naughty makes the drinky drinky." And we knew that was affecting performances on that latter part of the Killers tour, so you can probably see what probably happened at that point. But yeah, this is where Di'Anno goes and closes that first chapter of that first lineup of Maiden, really. You know, it's all different from here onwards.
Yeah, and it's at this point that they're really catching on as well. They're doing some big old tours, and obviously Harris and the boys are just wanting to push on. Di'Anno's like, I don't really feel it tonight. And if you've got to put up with that for about 6 months on big tours and stuff, because they were supporting big acts still at this point, weren't they? You know, and stealing the show in some of them. and for me, this is almost the start of Maiden proper as well. This record, and they just go from strength to strength.
It's what again. It's the first of the stepping stones, isn't it? In terms of Birch production, the songwriting quality, and everything else. It's that first step that it's the first step towards where they will meet perfection, which should somewhere be around numbers 1 and 2. You would have a little comment because you would be quieter about this one.
Yeah, the only reason I'm a bit quieter is just because again it's Di'Arno, so I can only appreciate it as much as I can here. And if it wasn't for the music being, so as I say, like razor sharp and cutting edge at the time, it would probably have been lower. But that is strong enough for me, and I think Di'Arno, it does him a lot of, it helps him a lot more because he seems to have a lot more sort of involvement in his part in the band at this point.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what then. I don't know whether to go to side with him quitting or him being kicked out. A part of me thinks he quit because he didn't get as much control as he wanted.
Ooh.
And he was struggling with what Harris was like, no, this is a working band, we're going to keep doing this.
He probably just wanted to just be in a band, play like 1,000 capacity venues and get shit faced,
get your mates in and stuff like that. It was obvious they would not have become the band they did.
With
and
Di'Arno.
we're not saying with Bruce, or just probably without Di'Arno.
Yeah.
He'd reached the level of his performances both in the studio and maybe live. I don't know. Some people will say this is still the golden age.
Yeah.
But then there's another level you can go to, which is what Bruce was and what the band, particularly Steve Harris, probably needed and wanted.
Totally.
Yeah. But there you go. You're number 3, my number 8, and your number...
Yeah, but I mean, like, the other thing you've got is this is again in the era that we were discussing, 1981 being such an epic year for music.
Another one.
1980 also delivering the goods, because 1980 you had your Black Flag Damaged.
Whoa.
Black Sabbath come with Mob Rules with Dio.
Yes.
Rush bring out Moving Pictures. Ozzy's on Diary of a Madman, which for me is pinnacle.
So we discussed 80 being
Motley
ridiculous.
Crue, Too Fast for Love. Great album.
So you've got 2 years there.
2 years in a row where bands are just kind of throwing out these epic
classic records.
Like Mob Rules at the time probably got a lot of stick. Because everybody's like, oh God, like, it's not
in retrospect.
Better than Heaven and Hell.
Incredible album.
Better than Heaven and Hell.
We'll get no spoilers, but we have mentioned a couple of bands.
I might agree with you on that one. I might agree with him.
Sickener.
Probably the riff to Mob Rules alone.
Something like
gets that rank.
But anyway, this year is a great year for it.
It is.
Harris again on this album is going down the literature route because he likes the dark element that it brings. It's just Edgar Allan Poe, Murders in the Room.
It's there, and it's
which is a quality little story because it's a bit of a whodunit.
And straight into the historical stuff with Genghis Khan as well.
which
will be referenced on most albums since.
It's a quality record, but it wouldn't.
There's probably something from a film on here. Like he's always got a film. Twilight Zone.
Well,
I mean, Wrathchild. I could speak about Wrathchild forever because Wrathchild's one of the first Maiden songs I heard.
Yeah.
And I only heard it because I heard the British Watford band Sixth's cover of Wrathchild. Sixth, if you remember them.
Yeah.
And that was a good track. But I thought to myself, well, how did the original sound? Because that just is nutsy. And then I listened to the Maiden one.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, that is a hell of a track. And it's remained one of my favourite Maiden tracks ever since.
Nice.
But things like, this album's incredible.
Hit your top 10.
It hit my top 10.
Yeah, all of us.
It really...
Yeah.
There's not much I can say about it.
Alright, so Killers is done. So we're down to the big two.
For anyone listening, and we do appreciate anyone tuning in, go go follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah.
We're there.
Hashtag.
For those of you that haven't delved into the Diano era, get in there. Get in there. Those who have been watching carefully and ticking off their own little lists at home will realise that these top two are identical for all three of us. We didn't know what our top 3 or 4 were, did we? We kept that quite close to our hats. Hats? Hearts, is it?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter really. We kept it under our hats.
We kept it under our hats,
Yes,
that's the phrase.
yeah,
Thanks, bruv.
Good.
Top 2, they're all the same for us, but in what order? So, in traditional manner, Lamington, what is your second favourite Maiden record?
And I'm going to point out and say this at repeated intervals. There is pretty much nothing to choose between them.
Yeah.
No.
Could have flipped on any given day,
Yeah.
but I now have a single solitary justification for this once we get round to it. But my number 2 is Power Slave.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Number 2 is Power Slave, so no discussion point yet.
Smithy, what's your second favourite
My
Maiden
second
album?
favourite album, and again, like Chris said, it actually annoyed me that they couldn't both be number 1. Like I mentioned,
No joint rankings allowed.
No, and I mentioned it about another band recently, and you were like, "No,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not how it works."
Yeah.
This is very like Chris said, like that. But I had to go with my heart or my hat, and my number 2 is Seventh Son.
Seventh Son of a Seventh Son is your second
It's
favourite.
my second favourite, but like Chris said, on certain days of the week, it just shifts round.
Yeah.
Basically, whichever one I'm listening to, I'll be like, well, that's number 1.
Yeah.
And I could follow it up with the other one that'll be like, no, that's number
That's
one.
number 1.
So it's really hard now.
Yeah.
They're too good. But
Go on then.
Come on then,
We
tell
need
us.
it.
Equally, it's been,
What is
you
it?
know, the big theme of these two is that you could flip them quite easily. This was, when we started this journey,
Yeah.
this was my number 1. It's now my number 2. Probably the most I've thought about rankings is the top 2. My second favourite is Seventh Son of the Seventh Son.
So no discussion point.
So no
Technically
discussion.
number 2.
No.
Technically, no discussion point.
So,
There's one reason Seventh Son got 2 and not 1, and we'll go into it when we go into it.
Yeah.
so that means I have to say my favourite Maiden
favourite Iron
album, number
Maiden
1
album,
is Seventh
Seventh
Son of the
Son.
Seventh Son. So that's the talking
Let's
point.
go
we
in.
discuss it.
Let's grab it from behind me there. This was my numero uno.
Is that an
For
OG?
good reason. That
Is
is
that
an
an
OG
OG
press.
press?
This is
That
original,
is.
yeah.
You're
it's
holding
original.
up?
Yep, this is an original. So,
EMI?
yep, so this is my original. So, right. So this is 1988 with the first single originally. It's going to kick off this discussion point from earlier for me. First single, Can I Play With Madness? Which I think is Maiden's best
single. Yeah, fair play.
It's just so good.
Is that what you thought as well?
It's not my
Oh, right.
favourite Maiden
Oh.
single.
What was it then?
Reveal it now.
Because originally we had Wasted Years
Yeah.
from Mr. Harvey.
Mine is 2 Minutes to Midnight.
Oh,
It's
but
my
that's fine,
favourite
though.
because
That's fine.
of the drag of that guitar at the
That's
beginning.
fine.
The punch of that guitar. And
Yeah.
we'll go into it when
Yeah,
we
we'll
talk
get
about
there.
Slave.
So, so Can I Play With Madness first single,
It's
Evil
hard,
That Men
though.
Did that get
Contend.
to number 1 in the
Yeah, no.
UK? I wouldn't be
First one is
surprised.
Still Bring Us Door to the Slaughter.
Right. Really?
Yeah, this was high, top 5 I think. Then Evil That Men Do. So what a pair of singles. What a pair of singles. Could be the best double singles off the
Well,
Maiden
that's
album.
why it pains me to not put either of them
Possible.
first because they're
Best-
both
best
so
single
amazing.
double one.
Best
They
double
must be.
singles, because these are all
Hands
we
down.
could argue Stranger and Wasted Years from the previous album, from Somewhere in Time.
This trumps it,
But
doesn't
this
it?
is
It
the
does
best
trump
one.
it.
And again, some live tracks from Made in England will release the singles as well. Clairvoyant and Infinite Dreams. They're still from the album, but live versions. Good covers for this. You have Massacre by Thin Lizzy a silly original disposable track called Black Bark Blues, but one of my most amazing double Maiden B-sides that I love listening to are the new studio versions of Prowler and Charlotte the Harlot with Bruce singing.
Really?
Full studio ones, recorded with this production.
Yeah, nice.
It's so amazing to listen to them. I'm not saying I prefer it at all. I don't think I prefer them to Diano's versions.
Well, I do.
But they are great. They're absolutely great. Obviously, Maiden England was put out at the same time. So it was this tour, the 7th tour of the 7th tour, is the one that was recorded for the Maiden England album.
Yeah.
The Maiden England album there was a VHS and there was a vinyl CD album to go with it as well. You've got so many Eddies now. We've got like this mutant Eddie on the front. You've got Wise Man Eddie there. They had a lot of Eddies for this period.
Blue Maiden, my favourite.
Blue Maiden
exactly.
again. There it is. So Dickinson, Harry, Murray, Smith and McBrain, so it's still the Imperial lineup as we'll call it.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is their first year they headlined Donington as well.
Yeah. Apparently, Ron Smallwood got offered Maiden to do Donington.
Yeah.
But he just said no until they were like that headline act.
Yeah.
So they must have got offered it for a
Probably
long
couple of
time
times,
before.
yeah.
But he wanted to wait until they could headline it.
This is like, this is...
Boy, is
the
that a
money
tour.
job. Yeah, it's incredible. Watching Maiden England every time will do it for you. Obviously, musically wise, thrash and death and metal are really beginning the ascendancy at this point, taking off the Florida death metal sound.
Yeah.
Bay Area's gone nuts and everything else. So
yeah.
heavy metal in its purest form at that point, with this and thrash and everything else,
It's a
and not so many
different
offshoots.
landscape,
It's definitely at this point the peak for all of it.
Yeah.
I always reference Monty Python for this album, because Graham Chapman's, of course, in the Cannibal Band's video. Which makes it. And there is, of course, a big event for this. This is the final album of Adrian Smith from the Imperial lineup.
Yeah.
He will leave after this and form the fabled but not very successful ASAP project. Adrian Smith and Powell.
Don't know, mate.
So yeah, ASAP, the Silver and Gold album. So this is where we are with my number one album, and well, it's number one because it does not have a solitary skip, and that is where number two fails.
You've got a skip on your
on number two.
On Power Slave.
I've got a skip on Power Slave, but not. So this doesn't have it. It also does on side one. Side one is my second favourite pure side of Iron Maiden.
Oh, what's your first?
Side one of
Power Slave, yeah.
Sorry, side two. Side two of Power Slave.
Side two.
Side two of Power Slave is my greatest...
So the chink in the armour's inside one on Power Slave?
Yes. Don't worry about that, boys. We're not there yet. So the point I'm making is the separation
Instrumental.
was the weakest track on here, which is the Prophecy.
Yeah.
It's the weakest track by a mile. Is necessary, A, for the narrative of the concept. You couldn't take it out.
Yeah.
Even if it's a weaker track, you can't skip it. I also just don't think it's a skippable track. It's just the weakest track on my favourite Maiden album.
Really?
So I'm still going to go. It stops that final side.
It's one of my faves,
Oh,
mate.
well.
The Prophecy.
But that for
when
me...
it comes out of Seventh Son and then into that, straight
But
into
I love it.
chorus
I'm literally splitting
it's just
hairs
hats
here.
off to
I
this
technically
fucking
love it
record.
as much as you both just said you did. But I'm having to say to you, to really Power Slave gets partially talked about by me here, because this is where we go round. This is you've got to separate them.
Yeah, somehow.
So everyone has guessed that Power Slave is going to be discussed next, and that is the difference between the two. There is a track on Power Slave that I don't always skip, but could easily skip without thinking about it.
Fair play.
Both the albums have my number one side B of Power Slave and number two side one of Seventh Son favourite sides of Maiden. This is how close it was between these. They each had my favourite sides of a Maiden album. They literally were inseparable, and it came down to one on Power Slave I will skip if I'm in the mood to.
Yeah.
And it's weak enough for me to do that.
Yeah.
The Prophecy is
Better
the
not be
only
Flash of the
weakish song on it. However, I don't ever skip it. It's part of it, and I just slightly prefer the production on this. The guitars they're throttling, they're evil on this.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously on Power Slave, it's the absolutely almost, apart from Brave New World that we discussed, it's the classic Maiden guitar sound on Power Slave. This isn't. but it suits the somewhat darkness of the
And it's
concept
better
of the
than what they're
piece.
trying on Somewhere in Time. So it's well
Yeah.
discussed that this is what they tried on Somewhere in Time. They got absolutely 10 out of 10 on the next
just
effort.
rock the guitars, right?
In
And
terms
again,
of
I didn't need to go through all the tracks. It's a monstrous opener in Moonchild. Infinite Dreams is just benchmark Maiden style semi ballad.
Infinite Dreams is in my top 10
There you
favourite
go.
Maiden songs.
The perfect double
Fuck
single, the proggery of Seventh Son that I get. It's you said the Clairvoyant is a absolute ridiculous, 80,000 sing-along special.
It is,
And Good
yeah,
Die
yeah.
Young is a snappy finisher. It's not another 10-minute epic
it's
finisher.
just-
It gives the album a good solid smack. You've got this incredible artwork just to look at and to savour with. Again, it should have been a gatefold. Even if it was a single vinyl, it should have been a gatefold.
Yeah.
Always lets them down when Riggs does these wraparounds.
Yeah.
And then not officially double albums, which is a bit sort of well dodged. It also completes the Eddie story, begun in Peace of Mind.
Yeah.
If you
It's
look
true.
at it, I think they're framed in the background somewhere. But yeah, to me, this is utter Maiden perfection. Between 45 and 50 minutes long, so again, we haven't got this
It's not
ridiculous
too long.
length, but you get one spectacularly long big prog out.
Yeah. In the
In
middle.
Seven
I love
Sons.
it, love it.
So
It's
Yeah.
the blend, you
much.
see.
Yeah.
You've got the prog, the ballad, the big poppy singles, blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah. It is flawless.
I think
Flawless.
you mentioned the title track. For me, this is my favourite lengthy Maiden track, Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. Just does Mariner, I think, for me. And it does a couple of the other lengthier stuff on some of their quality post 2000.
Yeah, where the prog is
It's
dialed up
equally
to 10.
fantastic. I'll go into why this is my number 2 and number 1, and maybe you want to do the same, Smiths.
I will do, yeah.
And it's very, very cut and clear for me. It does have a skip, and it's Only the Good Die Young for me. I don't want to label it a throwaway track, but I do feel
For
that.
a number 2 album, surely.
Yeah, but doesn't that... And I do feel that.
yeah.
I feel it's a bit of a throwaway song, but doesn't that show the quality of the other only 7 tracks for it to be one of the greatest rock albums of all time?
It's astonishing.
I would just reference, we did it when we did No Prayer for the Dying. No Prayer for the Dying, the title track, was rumoured, my mate is adamant, to be on Seventh Son. So for me, you swap Only the Good Die Young with No Prayer for the Dying.
Number 1.
It's going to be a real hard fucking decision to make, So that's my reason. It's not your number 1 album either, Smiths. Why not?
It's not, and it's also for the same reason that I feel that the Clairvoyant is a stronger finishing track. So
Sequencing maybe.
if I could have sequenced it as Prophecy to Only the Good Die Young, then Clairvoyant, to end on the Clairvoyant's chorus is are so good.
Yeah.
And the Clairvoyant
It rides
captures
you out the energy that it comes in with Moonchild, doesn't it?
The Clairvoyant as well captures the concept album.
Mm.
So the whole Seventh Son of the Seventh Son thing,
It finishes the story almost, doesn't it?
based on Orson Scott Card's book, is all about that. So for me, it would have been so cool to end the album on the very subject matter, very clear coming through in the lyrics.
Yeah, I think that's interesting.
You always come at it with that.
If only they had the forethought.
Yeah.
Nice. Clairvoyant about this, but I didn't know that No Prayer thing though.
Yeah.
Now I know I'm
there.
gonna switch them on my iTunes playlist. I'm gonna see what it sounds like as an
It
album.
changes the album a lot.
But I love it. And the only thing I would say is, for such a strong album, I'm not into the artwork.
Oh, really?
There's some. I know what you're saying about the blue.
Icy chill of
now the
Seventh Son.
The logo and everything, I love it, but I find this very sparse.
Yeah.
You've gone from Somewhere in Time's detailed quality artwork,
things you can find.
but they're like, because this is so concept, we're only going to give you the the bit.
Yeah.
That's the subject matter right there in the middle, and that's it.
That's fair play.
And even with the back as well, you've gone from Somewhere in Time's lovely back, which continues it. This continues it, but very minimal. You just see him there.
Yeah, he's certainly.
I like the way they do reference other edits.
It is very clever. There is, again though, you're nitpicking over a cracking cover that when you go back to say Power Slave is where that run of iconic Maiden of Live After Death just and make you want to listen to the records. If you see them when you're younger,
you need that in your life.
Because you don't feel that it's like ridiculously cartoony, putting a barrier up because it's silly type stuff. It's got a certain something that pulls you in.
Totally.
To think you're going to be hearing something exciting.
Well, this proper gives you the impression this thing is unique. Because you've had that Eddie, that sort of busy sort of cover, Peace of Mind, Power Slave, everything. There's been loads and loads of detail. So for this, they just don't want you to think of anything else.
No,
but join us for the journey. This is the simple.
It just goes with the more conceptual thing, doesn't it?
I will mention the one last thing here because it came across during Somewhere in Time about how they attempted the synths and these other sonic experimentations.
Yeah,
it comes to fruition here. The use of the keyboard.
Yeah,
I am not a big keyboard fan. I never have been. And the keyboards, the way they're deployed on this, are just incredible.
And you never go, oh, that's a bit of funky keyboard.
No,
it's just there.
It's integrated into the sound as a whole. Harrison and Birch have to get a lot of credit for how Maiden's sound went through that change from the real definitively crisp, heavy, hard Power Slave Maiden through Somewhere in Time to this.
Sure.
While obviously No Prayer of the Dying is almost like a garage album. They've stripped everything out and made the next step. You can't go any further at this point in history in terms of what you can get in the studio.
Yeah.
This is it. Like you say, the tone on the guitars is just throttling. When you listen to the riff on The Evil That Men Do, is so driving, it's so intense, and the absolute tone of the guitars just drive that particular riff. It just drives it hard. It's incredible, and it goes together on that one particularly. It's just, I just again, possible favourite Maiden production, notwithstanding Unbrave the World. So what can you say? As you get to the perfection, it's hard not to just keep finding more superlatives to say why it's so incredible.
I don't even skip Only the Good Die Young. Again, like I let it ring out, but it's.
I think if it didn't
the only criticism. It's the only thing that can separate these two. Which, ironically, you've got something on here that does the same.
Yeah,
I have.
I think with Only the Good Die Young, because it ends the record. If it was in the middle, I'd just happily go through it.
Yeah.
But when it comes at the end, you think, oh, there's nothing else after this, so I'll just stop it there.
No.
Yeah. So
we are used to Maiden albums always ending on some form of something epic. It's almost even No Breath of the Dying, that was a much more concise album, still had a fairly epic ender.
Yeah.
This is one of the few in this first phase of Maiden. The Dark is another example where it's a big ender.
Yeah.
This is a little bit understated.
Yeah.
But it's almost with Seventh Son,
I was going to say that.
Think of it
Seventh Son at the end.
If you think of it as a book, a concept and a story, you build all the way to the absolute hooky as shit clairvoyant, anthemic. That's the big bit. It's almost Only Good Die is the epilogue of a book. So it doesn't have this epicness, this lift. We've had this main story. The clairvoyant is the big payoff.
Yeah.
And then really, in
lost.
terms of a book, that's a little bit of your more low-key epilogue, sort of the final part of your book, last chapter and epilogue. So it doesn't have so for me, it drops.
He's coming out of
again, it's just a wild load of theoretical nonsense.
But that would only work, and it does, if I think about it, because Moonchild takes a while to build in.
So I think that it's just an interesting thing as to why that's a shorter, more slightly low-key Maiden closer. Because you just said you've got the better closer at the end of your 7.
Yeah.
So there we go. It may not have been as much, but there's not a lot of rubbish to talk about with this either.
Perfection.
No,
it's perfection.
Actually, in Maiden's history, they have absolutely now got to the apex where they will be during that first time together, that first Maiden phase. This is the pinnacle of it. So you haven't even got a lot of shit to talk about. Yeah, Adrian Smith leaves, but it's completely amicable. He just wants to do rock and roll. He's bored with Maiden. It's not
They're
nasty.
in the best place they've ever been.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, so at this point,
Second best place.
you ain't even got a lot of stuff to talk about historically around this period, where it might be a little bit like a bit, not trash, but it goes beyond the album. It feels like we haven't talked about you said we haven't talked about these in the same depth, but that's because we just love them.
Oh yeah,
There's
like,
very little to nitpick.
You can't criticise. All you can say is the greatest points of the albums, and then talk about the features of why it's so great. Like you said, I was just about to say a minute ago with the synths. They've gone from okay, we'll do a bit of guitar synth to let's just get full on keys in there.
Yeah.
But you will now be a
sounds all the
member.
better for it,
The keys will be a member.
Yeah.
Like, it's part of the instrument.
Well, they had the keyboard player was hidden off stage, but was now playing live with them to augment this sound, which is a huge change to the dynamic of the band.
It's just
he's
natural,
not on
isn't
stage. His presence in terms of the musical setup now changes the way they've done things all the way back to that second album.
Yeah,
it's natural progression because they've experimented with it on Somewhere in Time. It's cliched, but they've had the experiment. They've experimented with different equipment, different sounds. They've learned how to use technology better, and this is the result.
And there it is. So that was my number one most favourite Iron Maiden album.
Incredible records.
Which means you two
can our favourite.
Tell us what your favourite one was.